What if I told you that the life you're living isn't really yours? What if every belief you've ever had about money, security, success wasn't planted by wisdom, but programmed by design? There is a moment in every life, a flicker, a fracture, when the script begins to feel wrong. You look up from your desk. You glance at the clock. You scroll through your feed again, and a silent question echoes through the silence. Is this it? You were handed a roadmap the moment you were born, a path so familiar, so socially polished, that few ever stop to question it. Go to school, get good grades, obey authority, earn a degree, find a job, work hard, save what little is left, retire if your health allows at 65. Then, finally, rest. But tell me, who wrote that script? And why do they want you to follow it? You see, the system you're trapped inside was never broken. It was built precisely, methodically, to function exactly as it does. And it does not malfunction. It extracts. It consumes. It entertains just enough hope to keep you obedient, but never enough truth to set you free. We like to believe the world is fair, that wealth is a result of effort, that success is a simple equation of hard work and time. But this belief is the most dangerous illusion of all. Because while you play by the rules you were taught, those at the top, the silent architects, the smiling bankers, the puppeteers in tailored suits, play a different game altogether. You play not to lose. They play so they never can. They don't run the race. They own the track. They're not playing Monopoly with you. You are the board. And worst of all, you don't even realize you're in the game. You thought you were a player. You're just a piece. But today, we stop. Today, we ask the forbidden question. Today, we see the code behind the curtain. We trace the invisible hand that moves the pieces. Because today, we take the red pill. Not the sugar-coated optimism they sell you. Not the hustle culture slogans. Not the one-day dream. But the truth. Raw. Unfiltered. Undeniable. This isn't about rebellion. It's about recognition. Recognition of the hidden game you were born into. Recognition that freedom was never given, it must be taken. So, take a breath. This is the moment before the veil lifts. The moment you stop reacting and start seeing. The water stills. The red pill dissolves. And everything begins to change. From the moment you're born, you are taught to walk a narrow path. Not to question it, but to follow. Not to lead, but to perform. You are not taught how to think. You were taught what to think, and even more dangerously, what not to think. In kindergarten, you were given gold stars for obedience. In high school, grades for memorization. In college, debt for a promise. And somewhere along the way, you began to believe the lie. The beautiful, well-packaged, socially celebrated lie. That if you just keep playing along, if you work hard, keep quiet, and follow the rules, freedom will be waiting for you at the finish line. But here's the truth. Freedom was never the destination. Because freedom was never part of the plan. What they handed you was not a blueprint for success. It was a leash. A leash made of beliefs so deeply internalized, you began to call them your own. Nietzsche once warned that in individuals, insanity is rare, but in groups, it is the rule. You were raised inside a cultural insanity that worships productivity but starves, meaning it sells freedom, yet manufactures dependence. You were not raised to be wealthy. You were raised to be manageable, predictable, replaceable. Your value was defined by your ability to plug into the machine, to sit in a cubicle, trade your hours for a paycheck, and to mistake a weekend off for liberation. And when the exhaustion sets in, they offer you crumbs of escape, vacations, happy hours, sports, and endless scrolling. numbing distractions to keep the deeper question from rising. Is this what I was made for? Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, the invisible psychological current passed from generation to generation, shaping our values without our awareness. You inherited not just a culture but a script, a silent, unwritten agreement that said, work hard, don't ask too much, obey authority, buy what they tell you. Call that freedom. But true freedom, the kind that frees the soul, not just the calendar, cannot be outsourced. It must be claimed, not inherited. Felt, not fantasized. It begins the moment you realize you've been trained, conditioned, programmed, and if you do not reclaim your mind, someone else will continue to use it for their profit. You were never meant to awaken. You were meant to comply. But here's the irony. The cage they built for you was never locked. The key was always there, buried beneath years of routine, beneath bills and broken dreams, beneath the voice in your head that whispers, you don't deserve more. But you do. And this moment is where that story begins to crack. The illusion starts to flicker. And behind it, something ancient stirs. Not rebellion, not rage, but remembrance. Remembrance of who you were before the programming, before the leash, before the illusion of freedom became your normal. So take another breath. Because this isn't just a documentary. It's an awakening. And chapter by chapter, we're going to unlearn the lies they built your life upon. Money isn't real. Not in the way you think it is. It's not gold. It's not wealth. It's not even value. It's belief. A shared hallucination. A collective agreement written in numbers, digits, and symbols. Backed by nothing but trust and enforced by power. But that illusion is strong enough to enslave billions. Most people spend their lives chasing money like it's oxygen. They wake up for it, trade their time for it, sacrifice their health, their passions, their relationships, all for it. They'll burn their lives down, slowly and silently, for pieces of paper that no longer represent anything real. But the ones who understand the system, they don't chase it. They create it. They don't trade time for money. They build mechanisms that print it while they sleep. They understand that money is not the goal. It's the game board. And the rules? They weren't made for you. You were taught to think of money like a wage, earned hourly, saved cautiously, spent wisely. But money in its truest form is a tool of leverage. It can be multiplied, abstracted, invested. It can shape cities, control nations, fund wars, buy silence, breed empires. To the elite, money is not the reward of hard work. It's a spell, a symbol, a force to be harnessed, not worshipped. And while you were taught to save it, they learned how to print it legally, quietly, invisibly. They build systems. They own the pipelines. They don't work in the machine. They own the machine. You see, the rich don't work harder, they work above the system. They sit at the levers of credit, capital, and policy. They create assets. You create output. They understand something that most people never even think to question. Money doesn't exist unless someone believes in it. And belief is a currency more powerful than gold. Frankl once said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." But most people never change the way they see money. And so, money remains their master. But the moment you begin to see it, really see it, not as salvation, but as strategy, not as virtue, but as velocity, that's the moment the illusion starts to shatter. Money is a mirror. It reveals the games we play, the fears we inherit, the scripts we never question. And the truth is, the system wants you to stay small, to fear debt, to fear risk, to stay dependent, because dependency is control. But you were never meant to be just a player. You were meant to design the game. The question is, Will you learn the rules? Or will you keep playing a game you were never meant to win? You were told that debt is normal, that it's just part of life, part of being an adult, part of playing the game. Student loans, car loans, credit cards, mortgages. They dressed it up in polite language. Financing, installments, good debt. They normalized the noose. And you never questioned it. Because everyone around you was wearing the same collar. But debt in its rawest form is not a tool. It is a trap. A beautifully wrapped chain. Elegant, sanctioned, socially accepted. But make no mistake, it is a form of modern servitude. A silent contract signed not in ink, but in desperation, in ignorance, in hope. Hope that if you just borrow now, you'll be free later. But later never comes. Because debt isn't designed to help you rise. It's designed to keep you still. You think you're climbing the ladder? But the ladder is on a treadmill. And the speed increases with every dollar you owe. Frankl once wrote that when a person cannot find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. And in our time, we've confused consumption with fulfillment. We buy to feel alive. We spend to prove our worth. We borrow not because we're weak, but because the system taught us that this is how life works. But here's what they never told you. Debt is not just financial. It's psychological. It teaches you to obey, to stay afraid, to accept mediocrity, to silence your inner rebellion in favor of stability. Because when you're in debt, you don't dream. You calculate. You don't create. You survive. You don't ask dangerous questions. You wake up, go to work, make the payment, and hope you don't fall behind. The elite understand this. They don't fear debt. They weaponize it. They use it to acquire assets, to build empires, to fund control. You use debt to survive. They use debt to dominate. And the difference isn't about money. It's about education. You were taught to think of debt as a burden. They were taught to see it as leverage. But the kind of debt most people carry, it's not leverage. It's leash work. It keeps you docile, trackable, busy, and convinced you're progressing, even as your soul slowly suffocates. You're not free. You're on a payment plan. Jung would say that what you do not bring to consciousness will continue to rule your life, and you will call it fate. Debt has ruled your life, and you've called it adulthood. But what if adulthood was never meant to be this way? What if freedom isn't about retiring at 65, but about unlearning everything they conditioned you to accept? What if true wealth begins not with earning more, but with removing the chain? Because once you see the trap, once you feel the collar and recognize the system that forged it, you begin to awaken something they cannot control: sovereignty. And that is the first step out of the cage. Chapter 4. How the Rich Escape. They taught you to trade your time for money. A fair exchange, they said. An honest living. But beneath the surface of that polite phrase is a brutal truth. You were taught to sell the one thing you can never get back for the one thing they can print on demand. Time, your breath, your youth, your presence is finite. It dies a little each day. Money is not. They can make more. You cannot. And this subtle, invisible imbalance is where the trap was set. You were trained to see your life as a schedule, a calendar of appointments, shifts, deadlines. But the wealthy, they were taught to see it as a system, not a treadmill to run on, a machine to build. While you were learning how to fill out a resume, they were learning how to move capital, how to make money work for them, how to use time as the blueprint, not the payment. You were taught to chase paychecks. They were taught to buy income. They don't work in businesses. They own them. They don't save for retirement. They purchase freedom in advance. They use money like a mirror to reflect their values, to buy back their time, to multiply their reach. You use money to escape the day. They use money to shape the decade. The difference? They understand leverage. Not just financial leverage, but psychological leverage, emotional leverage, time leverage. While you fear debt, they bend it into a weapon. They borrow to acquire assets, to increase cash flow, to buy equity in companies that pay them whether they show up or not. The system gives you debt that bleeds you slowly. They use debt that feeds them daily. They don't avoid risk. They study it, master it, use it like a sculptor uses a chisel, cutting away the noise until only power remains. The rich escape the trap not because they are lucky, but because they understand a fundamental truth. Time is the real currency, and the true poor man is the one who spends every hour just trying to buy it back. Nietzsche said that freedom is the will to be responsible for oneself. But most people never claim that will, because responsibility feels heavy and obedience is easier. But freedom was never meant to be easy. It was meant to be earned with awareness. The rich escaped because they chose a different equation. Not time for money, but money for time. Not labor, but leverage. Not paycheck, but passive flow. They see the world like a chessboard, and each asset is a move toward exponential freedom. But you've been playing checkers. Linear, predictable, safe. They escape because they don't play by the rules. They write them. And the moment you realize that the rules were never sacred, only strategic, you gain the power to rewrite your own. This chapter isn't about envy. It's about exposure. The curtain is lifting, and what you see on the other side might just be the blueprint for your escape. Chapter 5. Why you were never told this. You've probably asked it at some point, maybe in frustration, maybe in quiet wonder. Why didn't they teach us this in school? Why weren't we shown how money actually works? How debt manipulates? How systems are built? How wealth is multiplied without labor? Why were we taught to memorize formulas, but never how to create freedom? The answer is simple. Because knowledge is leverage, and leverage is power. And if too many people held that power, the game would collapse. You see, school was never designed to make you free. It was designed to make you functional, to turn children into employees, dreamers into compliers. It's a factory of obedience, dressed as education. A beautifully decorated filter system, not to elevate every mind, but to sort you into ranks. The curriculum is not broken. It's engineered to reward conformity, to penalize independent thought, to condition you into believing that success is earned by obedience, not insight. They didn't teach you how to build wealth, because they need you to chase it. They didn't teach you how to spot manipulation, because they need you to trust the hand that feeds you. They didn't teach you how to think critically about systems, because systems don't survive scrutiny. They survive repetition. They survive silence. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The system hides your chains by calling them normal. It makes your struggle look like responsibility. It buries your potential under tests and tasks, so you never have time to ask, whose life am I really living? Because the moment you understand leverage, how a single decision can echo for decades, how one asset can replace 10 years of labor, how value is created, not chased, the entire illusion falls apart. And illusions are fragile. They need silence. They need ignorance. They need belief. But belief begins to crack when truth enters the room. The truth is, you were never meant to know this. Not because you weren't capable, but because you were too capable. Because a population that understands leverage can't be controlled. They don't beg for raises. They build revenue. They don't chase retirement. They create freedom. They don't ask for permission. They take responsibility. And that's dangerous to those who profit from your passivity. So no, they won't teach this in school. Because if they did, you wouldn't just escape the system, you'd dismantle it. Taking the red pill doesn't mean you become rich overnight. It doesn't mean you suddenly own assets, or unlock cheat codes, or beat the game. It means something far more terrifying and far more powerful. You begin to see the game, and once you see it, you can never unsee it. You start noticing the subtle scripts. How media glorifies consumption but mocks discipline. How schools reward obedience, not curiosity. How careers become cages and paychecks become sedation. You start questioning things you were taught to accept. Why does effort never feel like enough? Why do promotions feel like longer leashes? Why does success always seem just out of reach, no matter how fast you run? Because the red pill isn't a promise. It's a perspective, a lens that peels back the smiling mask of modern life and shows you the machine underneath. You begin to see that most people aren't choosing their lives. They're repeating them. You see the borrowed dreams, the invisible debt chains, the scrolling, swiping, numbing cycles of distraction. And then you look in the mirror, and the truth hits harder than any system ever could. You weren't just tricked. You participated. You kept your head down. You played nice. You believed that working harder would someday make it all make sense. But the red pill shatters that illusion, not with rage, but with clarity. Because now, you see that the path they sold you was a prison paved with praise. You see that security was the bribe they gave you to forget your potential. You see that freedom was never out there. It was always a matter of seeing clearly. And yes, that vision comes with pain. Seeing the truth always does. As Jung taught, to confront a person with their shadow is to show them their own light. But most would rather remain blind than burn. Because once you take the red pill, you lose the comfort of ignorance. You can't go back. You can't unlearn. You can't pretend the cage is a castle anymore. But what you gain is sovereignty. You stop waiting for permission. You stop begging the system to give you what it never will. You stop outsourcing your life to rules you never chose. The red pill is not a reward. It is a reckoning, a psychological rebirth, a slow, soul-deep awakening that whispers, no one is coming to save you, but you are not powerless.